Okay, good morning. So this morning I'm going to discuss to you about the World Bank. The World Bank is an international financial institution which provide loans and grants to governments of low and middle income countries for the purpose of pursuing capital gains. So these are big time and long-term projects that they support. It is the collective name for two organizations, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or the IBRD, and the International Development Association, or the IDA. So the World Bank is composed of these two organizations. In 2022, it is run by one president and 25 executive directors, as well as 29 various vice presidents. The two organizations that compose the World Bank have 189 and 174 member countries respectively, the IBRD and the IDA. And the countries which have the most voting power in the World Bank are the US, Japan, China, Germany, and the UK. So the bank aims loans at developing countries to help reduce poverty. Now, there is what we call the World Bank Group, which is composed of 5 organizations. So it is composed of the two organizations composing the World Bank, plus the International Finance Corporation or the IFC, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency or the MIGA, and the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes or the ICSID. The World Bank was created in 1944 during the Bretton Woods Conference, along with the International Monetary Fund or the IMF. So the president of the World Bank is traditionally an American, and the World Bank and the IMF are both based in Washington, D.C., and they work closely with each other. Now, the original intention of the World Bank is to provide temporary loans to low-income countries that could not obtain loans commercially. However, it also demands policy reforms from the recipients. In 1944 to 1974, it faced challenges due to being underfunded and experienced leadership struggles. In 1947, through the Marshall Plan, it somewhat lost its European allies or clients because they were receiving aids from other sources, prompting the World Bank to shift its focus to its non-European allies. In 1968, the loans were dedicated to infrastructure projects that could generate income for borrower countries. That was until 1968. In 1960, the IDA was formed, providing soft loans to developing nations. And before 1974, the loans were relatively small, and the bank emphasized fiscal conservatism and strict criteria for loan applications. So when we say fiscal conservatism, it usually involves reduced spending by the government, tax cuts, privatization, deregulation, and free trade. So the first country which received its first loan, it's the first country to be granted the World Bank loan was France in 1947, but with the strict conditions that they would balance their budget and that they would remove the Communist Party members from the government. So France complied, and within hours, the loan was granted to them. In 1974 to 1980, it shifted its focus to addressing the basic needs of people in the developing world. So it included loans on social services and other sectors. With the emphasis on poverty alleviation, there was a significant increase in third world debt, rising at an average annual rate of 20% from 1976 to 1980. So maybe the Philippines was one of those countries which availed loans for poverty alleviation during this time. In 1980, the World Bank Administrative Tribunal was established to handle disputes between the World Bank Group and its staff regarding non-observance of contracts or terms of appointment. During the period of 1980 to 1989, the bank emphasized lending to service third world debt and structural adjustment policies designed to streamline the economies of developing nations. Now, according to UNICEF in 1980, through its report, these structural adjustment programs of the World Bank had been responsible for reduced health, nutritional, and educational levels for tens of millions of children in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. So instead of improving the economy, those structural adjustment programs or policies had adverse effects to these countries. From 1989 to present, it began including environmental groups and NGOs in its loans, and it tries to control communicable diseases such as malaria, delivering vaccines to several parts of the world, joining combat forces, and in 2000, the bank announced a war on AIDS, and in 2011, the bank joined the Stop Tuberculosis Partnership. So, the World Bank included or added policies on environmental preservation together with economic development. So, borrower countries may develop their economies, no? At the same time, they should be able to preserve the environment. In June of 2022, the bank reported that $10.1 billion had been allocated to supply 78 countries with the COVID-19 vaccine. So let's discuss now the criticisms and controversies faced by the World Bank. First is governance. Now, since it is run by a small number of economically powerful countries, it was criticized for that. No, that's why it somewhat had a reform in its governance by including third world countries or developing countries such as China and India as voting countries in the World Bank. Second is the structural adjustment policies. According to others, these policies were mostly effective in countries with an institutional framework that allowed these policies to be implemented easily. But for some countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, economic growth regressed and inflation worsened. So, some examples of these structural adjustment policies that were not effective in sub-Saharan Africa were encouraging production, investment and labor-intensive manufacturing, changing real exchange rates, and altering the distribution of government resources. Third is fairness of assistance conditions. According to Naomi Klein, the World Bank loans and aid have unfair conditions attached to them that reflect the interest, financial power, and political doctrines, notably the Washington Consensus of the bank and the countries that are most influential within it. So, some examples of these unfair assistance conditions were when they forced school fees on students in Ghana, when they demanded that Tanzania privatize its water system, when it made telecom privatization a condition of aid for Hurricane Mitch, and when it demanded labor flexibility in Sri Lanka in the aftermath of the Asian tsunami, and when it pushed for eliminating food subsidies in post-invasion Iraq. Another criticism was its sovereign immunity. So, according to others, it is a shield which the World Bank wants to resort to for escaping accountability and security by the people. So we cannot sue the World Bank because it has a sovereign immunity. That is why they keep on imposing policies which may be unfair, or conditions which may be unfair to the borrower countries, but they will not be held accountable for whatever the consequences of those policies will be. Number 5 is PricewaterhouseCoopers. Now this scandal favored that company as a consultant in a bid for privatizing the water distribution in Delhi, India. Another criticism was its slow response to the COVID-19 pandemic with its Pandemic Emergency Financing Facility, or PEF, which was a fund that was created to provide money to help manage pandemic outbreaks. 7 is cronyism, when the son of David Malpass, the institution's president, was accused of being a prince and an important little fellow who could go running to daddy if things went wrong. Number 8 is its suspension of loans to Uganda. It's because of the Anti-Homosexuality Act enacted in Uganda in May 2023, which contradicts the World Bank's core values on human rights. That is why they suspended their loans to the country, because of that. Now, what about the partnership of the Philippines and the World Bank? Now, the partnership of the Philippines and the World Bank spans for almost 75 years now. It was since 1945 that when it started. So the World Bank supported programs and projects to alleviate poverty, to upgrade infrastructure, to improve health, nutrition, and education, to strengthen resilience against climate change and natural disasters, to promote peace and enhance global competitiveness. Some of the projects supported by the World Bank was the Binga Power Project, the Angat Power Project in Bulacan, the Maria Cristina Falls Hydropower Expansion Project, the irrigations in Pampanga, including Pantabangan Dam, the Manila Water Supply Project, and it also contributed to the establishment of the UPLB College of Agriculture. Also, the Magat River Multiple Purpose Project, which was funded from 1975 to 1986. And after the EDSA revolution, when our economy was so down, it supported private sector participation in the economy, anti-poverty and job generation efforts, especially in the rural areas, and acceleration of agricultural productivity and exports. It also supported the Bacon Manito Geothermal Development Project, the latest Cebu Geothermal Project, Leyte Luzon Geothermal Project, and supported continuing reforms in the liberalization of trade and the restructuring of the country's central bank. Now, when it comes to the decentralization of governance, it supported the LOGO Find, the Local Government Finance and Development Project, also the LGU Urban Water and Sanitation Project, and for peace initiatives, it supported the peace efforts in Mindanao through the Special Zone of Peace and Development Social Fund Project, the establishment of the ARMM Social Fund Project in 2002, the Mindanao Trust Fund in 2005, and the Bangsamoro Normalization Trust Fund in 2021. Also, on social welfare and development, it supported the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino Program, or the 4Ps. So according to the Independent Evaluation Group, the impact of the bank group's contribution was significant in strengthening macroeconomic management, social protection, and disaster risk management, upgrading rural infrastructure, and contributing to peace and reconciliation in Mindanao. During the pre-COVID-19 time, the Philippines had been growing rapidly, making substantial progress in reducing poverty and on track to become upper middle income country in the next few years. So in summary, the World Bank somewhat helps countries through big time projects by supporting big time and long term projects. At the same time, it imposes sometimes it imposes conditions which are perceived to be unfair and restrictive on the part of the borrower countries in favor of those who are uh, countries influential within the World Bank. Okay, so that's my report about the World Bank. My other group members will report about the Asian Development Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Thank you and God bless.